Welcome back to the Silent Husband Club. We sincerely apologize for the long break in stories, but from now on, we'll do our best to bring you a new video every single day. What if the home you worked so hard to provide became the very place where betrayal thrived in silence? What if the people you trusted most were hiding something unthinkable, just beyond the walls you thought were safe? Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps this channel grow and ensures you never miss our newest stories. The New Mexico sun burned down on the cracked asphalt as I wiped my oil-stained hands across my coveralls. Another 16-hour shift at Ramirez Auto Repair finally came to an end. My back ached from bending over engine blocks, and my shoulders screamed from wrenching loose bolts that had refused to move. But the overtime hours meant my 8-year-old son, Joshua, could keep going to his piano lessons, the one thing that lit his eyes up after long school days. I glanced at my watch. 7:45 p.m. Almost 8. I already knew Rebecca would be displeased when I walked through the door. She always had something sharp to say whenever I came home late. But what choice did I have? The cost of living in Albuquerque was climbing higher every month. My regular pay barely covered the mortgage, groceries, and Joshua's school expenses. So, I pushed my body harder, telling myself it was worth it, for him. When I finally pulled my beat-up Ford into the driveway of our modest 2-story house, something in my gut turned cold. The porch light was off. Rebecca always turned it on when she knew I was coming home. The curtains were drawn tightly across the living room windows, hiding everything inside. As I climbed out of my truck, I spotted our neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, watering her roses. Normally she'd wave and call out a friendly good evening, but tonight, she gave me only the briefest nod before hurrying back inside, leaving her garden hose spilling water onto the pavement. Strange, I muttered under my breath, walking toward the front door. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something wasn't right. The silence was too heavy, too absolute. Normally, I'd be greeted by the sound of Joshua's cartoons blasting from the living room, the crash of toy cars on the hardwood floor, or his excited voice racing to tell me about his day. But now, nothing. Rebecca? Josh? My voice echoed through the foyer. Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her face carefully made up even though it was nearly 8 at night. She wore a flowing blue dress I had never seen before, something far too fancy for an ordinary Tuesday evening. "Oh, you're back," she said, her tone strangely flat. "I wasn't expecting you so early." "Early?" I frowned. "It's almost 8. Where's Joshua?" "He's at my mother's," she answered quickly, her hands already busying themselves with wiping an already spotless counter. "She called and wanted to take him to a new movie." Last-minute thing. A cold knot formed in my chest. Her mother lived 3 hours away in Santa Fe. She never took Joshua anywhere overnight without calling me first. In fact, she always insisted we both agreed. "When did this happen?" I asked slowly. "You didn't mention it this morning." Rebecca's hand froze for just a second before resuming its needless wiping. "She called around noon. It was spontaneous. I had lived with this woman for nearly a decade. I knew her tells. The way she touched her neck when she was nervous. The way her voice pitched just a little higher when she lied. Both were happening now, flashing like warning signs in front of me." "That doesn't sound like your mother," I said quietly. "She plans things weeks in advance." Rebecca snapped, her voice sharp like broken glass. "Well, people change." Then, just as suddenly, she softened her tone. "Are you hungry? I could heat something up." I ignored her offer and walked toward the refrigerator, where Rebecca always kept a magnetic calendar filled with Joshua's activities. Doctor's appointments, school events, piano recitals. Today's square was blank. No trip to Grandma's. No note about a movie. Funny thing, I said slowly, keeping my eyes on the calendar. I drove past the school around 4. Saw Joshua getting on his regular bus. Her face drained of color. I picked him up after that. Mom called right after school ended. The lie hung in the air like a poison. Something inside me shifted in that moment, a foundation cracking under unbearable weight. I had pushed away the late nights at the office, the new clothes she couldn't explain, the cold distance in her eyes. But now those doubts solidified into something darker. I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling your mother." "No." Her response was too fast. Too sharp. "She's probably already asleep, you know how early she goes to bed." But I was already dialing. Margaret answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Daniel, dear. How lovely to hear from you. How's my grandson?" My stomach plummeted. "That's what I'm calling about. Rebecca said Joshua is staying with you tonight." A long pause. "I'm sorry, dear. I haven't seen Joshua in over a month. Is everything all right?" The blood drained from my face. "Everything's fine, Margaret. Must have been a mix-up. I'll call you later." I hung up and turned back to my wife. Her face was white as chalk. "Rebecca," I said quietly, every word shaking with controlled fury. "Where is our son?" Her lips trembled. She stammered, her eyes darting to the ceiling. He's upstairs. Sleeping. I didn't want to." "Stop." My voice cut through her excuses like a blade. "Just stop lying." I took the stairs 2 at a time, my boots pounding against the wood, Rebecca's heels clattering behind me as she begged me to wait. Joshua's bedroom door was closed. I pushed it open. The bed was neatly made. No school clothes tossed on the floor. No backpack by the door. The room looked untouched. A perfect, lifeless museum display. And in that silence, one thought echoed inside my skull: where's my son? Joshua's room was too neat, too silent, the kind of silence that makes your chest tighten. I turned slowly, my eyes locking on Rebecca. Her face crumpled, her voice breaking apart. "He's safe, I swear, he's just hiding." "Hiding?" My voice was low, dangerous. "Hiding from what?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. And then, from downstairs, the sound that froze my blood, the soft creak of the back door. Heavy footsteps moved across the kitchen tiles. "Rebecca," a man's voice called, casual, intimate, far too at home in my house. I had never heard the voice before. But I didn't need to. My wife's face said everything. Guilt. Terror. Recognition. "Who is that?" My voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a storm. "Daniel, please, let me explain." She reached for me, but I was already moving, taking the stairs down 3 at a time. There he was. A tall man with dark hair and expensive clothes, standing in my kitchen like he owned it. He held a bottle of wine in one hand, his expression shifting quickly from confident to startled to calculating. "You must be the husband," he said with astonishing audacity. "I'm Adrian Cole. I work with Rebecca." For a moment, I could only stare. He spoke as though this were some polite dinner party introduction, not the desecration of my home. "Get out," I growled. "Daniel, please." Rebecca's voice cracked from the top of the stairs. I said, get out of my house. Now. Adrian set the wine bottle on the counter with deliberate slowness, his lips curving into something between a smirk and a sneer. Look, this is complicated. Maybe we should all just sit down and... The roar that tore out of me startled even myself. It wasn't words, just raw fury. Adrian lifted his hands in mock surrender and stepped toward the door. I'll call you later, Rebecca, he muttered as he passed me. Those words cut deeper than any blade. They weren't words of a fling. They were the words of a man who had been here before, and who fully intended to come again. When the door closed, the house fell into suffocating silence. Rebecca stood on the stairs, tears streaming down her face, while I stood frozen in the kitchen, my fists shaking. How long? I finally asked, my voice hoarse. She hesitated, then whispered, 4 months. 4 months. 4 months of me breaking my back with double shifts to pay for piano lessons, for new clothes, for everything our son needed, while she was entertaining another man in my home. Where is Joshua? I demanded, my voice now deadly calm. She wiped her face with trembling hands. He's in the basement. He knows to stay quiet when Adrian comes over. I told him it was, like a game. Hide and seek. Her words shattered whatever remained of the man I thought I was. My son. My 8-year-old son. Hidden away like a nuisance so she could. I moved toward the basement door in a daze, every step like walking through a nightmare. The air down there was musty, heavy with dust and old furniture. Joshua? I called softly. Buddy, it's Dad. You can come out now. No answer. I flicked on the light, searching behind boxes, under the old ping-pong table, near the water heater. Nothing. My breath came faster, panic rising. Then I heard it. A faint scratching sound. Desperate. Rhythmic. Coming from the far corner. My eyes locked on an old refrigerator, unplugged and forgotten. A relic I'd been meaning to haul away for months. The scratching came again, muffled and frantic, from inside. My heart stopped. My hand shook as I grabbed the handle. And when I yanked the door open, my son tumbled out gasping, sobbing, his little face flushed and drenched in sweat. Dad. He choked. Dad, I couldn't get out. The door was stuck. I caught him in my arms, holding him tight against my chest. His body burned with heat, his tiny hands clutching me as though I were the only thing tethering him to this world. It's okay, buddy. You're safe now. Daddy's here. But even as I whispered those words, I knew nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be the same again. Joshua clung to me, his tiny fists gripping my shirt as though afraid I might vanish if he let go. His face was streaked with tears, his clothes damp with sweat, his little chest heaving against mine. I carried him upstairs, whispering soothing words I wasn't sure I even believed. In the kitchen, I set him gently on the counter, desperate to see his eyes, to reassure myself he was truly here, truly alive. That's when he pressed something into my hand, a crumpled piece of paper, damp from his grip. I wrote it, Dad, he whispered, voice trembling. In case something happened. With shaking fingers, I unfolded the note. The uneven handwriting nearly broke me. Dad, Mom makes me go in the cold box when Uncle Adrian comes. She says if I tell, they will take me away and I'll never see you again. It happened lots of times. Uncle Adrian says mean things about you. He says you are stupid and poor. Mom gives me treats after, but I'm scared. I love you. Help me, Dad. The words blurred as my vision swam with rage. 3 words echoed louder than the rest, lots of times. My son had been living in terror, believing that telling me the truth would destroy his world. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, mascara streaking her face, her hand shaking. "Daniel, please, let me explain." "Explain?" My voice was barely human. "Explain how you locked our son in a refrigerator so you could spread your legs for another man? Explain how you told him to treat it like a game? It wasn't like that." She cried. "He was safe. I checked on him." "Safe?" My voice thundered, making Joshua flinch. I immediately softened, stroking his hair, whispering that none of this was his fault, that he was blameless. Then I turned back to Rebecca, my fury cold and controlled. "Pack a bag. Get out." She shook her head, defiance flickering even through her tears. "This is my house too. You can't just get out." My voice was quiet now, deadly quiet, the kind of tone that left no room for doubt. Something in my face must have told her I wasn't bluffing, because she fled upstairs without another word. 20 minutes later she returned with a hastily packed suitcase, standing in the doorway with a look of desperation. "Please, Daniel, we can fix this. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed, bitter and hollow. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. What you did, there's no coming back from it." "What about Joshua?" she asked, her voice cracking. "He needs his mother." I looked down at my son, who was sipping water, his small shoulders trembling but beginning to relax in my presence. I shook my head slowly. "No. What he needs is protection. Protection from you." That night, as I tucked Joshua into bed beside me, his voice was small, tentative. "Dad, are you gonna make sure Mom can't hurt me anymore?" I smoothed his hair and made a promise that came from somewhere deeper than I had ever known. "Yes, Joshua. I swear it. No one will ever hurt you again." But as I sat alone in the living room later, Joshua's note trembling in my hands, I realized Rebecca's betrayal had reached far beyond infidelity. She had chosen herself, her pleasure, her secret life with Adrian, over the safety of our son. That wasn't weakness. That was corruption. And I knew in my bones that Adrian wasn't just a mistake. He was a predator. A man who had marked my family, exploited my wife, and terrorized my child. So I picked up my phone, dialing a number I had found weeks earlier when I still thought my biggest problem was proving Rebecca's affair. A gruff voice answered, "Frank Dwyer. Investigations." "This is Daniel Mercer," I said, my voice cold as steel. "I don't just need photos anymore. I need everything. Bank records, employment history, personal contacts. Every secret, every weakness. I want Adrian Cole stripped bare." There was a pause. "That's going to cost extra," Frank said. "I don't care what it costs. Do it." As I hung up, I looked toward the bedroom where my son was finally sleeping peacefully. My decision was already made. Adrian and Rebecca had shown me who they really were. Now I would show them who I was. And they weren't going to like what they found. The following days blurred together, but underneath the appearance of normality, I was preparing for war. I woke Joshua, made him breakfast, dropped him at school, worked my shifts, and helped with homework at night. To anyone looking in from the outside, we were just another father and son going about life. But behind the curtains, I was working with Frank Dwyer, building a case piece by piece against Adrian Cole and against Rebecca too. Frank was efficient, relentless. Within a week he handed me a folder that made my blood run cold. Photographs of Adrian at restaurants with women who weren't his wife. Hotel rooms paid in cash. Meetings with nervous-looking women at offices he had no business being in. Your wife isn't the first, Frank explained grimly. He has a pattern. Finds married women with access to financial accounts, seduces them, then uses them to move money. When they try to break away, he's already got leverage files, recordings, threats. Some lose their jobs. Some lose their families. One almost lost her life. I stared at the pictures, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Rebecca wasn't just cheating, she was part of something darker. Whether willingly or through coercion, she had dragged our family into Adrian's web. And Joshua had paid the price. Frank leaned closer, his weathered face hard. I've seen predators like him before. They think they're untouchable. Family connections, money, a silver tongue. But every man has a weakness. We just have to find his. That night, after Joshua fell asleep on the couch with pizza crumbs on his shirt and the TV still playing his favorite superhero movie, I carried him to bed and tucked him in. He stirred, half awake, and whispered, "Dad, this was the best day in a long time." His words cut through me like a knife. How many days had he spent in fear, while I worked myself to the bone, blind to what was happening inside my own house? The next morning, Frank introduced me to another victim, a woman named Jennifer Martinez. She had worked at a construction company in Denver, lured into sharing client information by Adrian's charm. When she tried to pull away, he threatened to expose her role in the scheme. She lost her job, her marriage collapsed, and she lived in constant fear. Her voice shook as she told me, "He keeps files. On everyone. Photos, schedules, personal information. Not just on the women, but on their families. Children, too. That's how he keeps control." Her words chilled me to the core. Adrian had files on Rebecca. Which meant he might also have files on Joshua. His school schedule. His routines. His favorite places. Everything. My son wasn't just collateral damage, he was leverage. The drive home from Denver gave me time to think, but no peace. By the time I reached Albuquerque, my decision was carved in stone. If Adrian wanted to play with leverage, then I'd turn his own world against him. His wife, Marianne, came from money and power. He had hidden behind her family name for years. But if she saw him for what he truly was, his protection would crumble. I called Frank the moment I walked in the door. "Arrange a meeting," I said. "With Marianne Cole." Frank's voice sharpened with disbelief. "That's insane. She'll never agree." "She will," I answered coldly, "if you tell her it's the only way to protect her children." By the end of that week, I was sitting across from Marianne in the quiet corner of a downtown hotel lobby. She was elegant, composed, her eyes sharp as she studied me. "Mr. Mercer," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. "I understand you have information about my husband." I slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photos, records, and documents Frank had collected, evidence of fraud, adultery, and blackmail. Marianne's face remained composed as she flipped through the pages, but I saw the moment when anger broke through her mask. "Some of these transfers went into our joint accounts," she murmured. If this becomes public, I cut in, "he won't just ruin you, he'll drag your children down with him. But I can help you. If you help me." She looked up slowly, her eyes sharp now, calculating. "What do you propose?" I leaned forward. "Help me build an airtight case. Give me what I need to trap him. In return, you'll come out clean, with custody of your children, and your family's reputation intact. But if you refuse," I paused, my voice low, deadly certain. "Tomorrow, this envelope goes to the FBI, the IRS, and your brother Jonathan. Your husband's face will be on the front page by noon. Marianne studied me for a long moment, then allowed herself the faintest of smiles. Adrian told me you were a simple man. Easy to fool. Easy to dismiss. She slid the envelope back toward me. He was wrong. In that moment, the trap began to close. The storm broke on a Thursday afternoon. By then, Rebecca had been calling me daily, her messages growing more desperate with each passing hour. She wept, begged, promised to end things with Adrian. But her words meant nothing anymore. I answered only once, giving her the single chance she claimed she wanted. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I told her. You'll see Joshua. But if you want any future with him, Adrian Cole must be gone from your life. Permanently. Her relief poured through the phone. I promise, Daniel. I'll tell him it's over. I ended the call without another word. The next day, I drove Joshua to the house we once called home. The sky was heavy with storm clouds, the air thick with a tension that mirrored my own heartbeat. Joshua sat quietly in the passenger seat, his small hands twisting the hem of his shirt. Dad, he whispered, are you and Mom getting back together? His question hit me harder than I expected. I chose my words carefully. What do you want to happen, buddy? He was silent for a long moment before answering. I just want us to be safe. I don't want to be scared anymore. I gripped the wheel tighter, staring at the house that had once been our sanctuary. Then that's what's going to happen. Rebecca flung open the door before we even reached the steps, her eyes filling with tears as she scooped Joshua into her arms. Baby, I've missed you so much, she cried. He hugged her back, but I saw it, the tension in his body, the hesitation in his little arms. Then came the question that shattered the facade. Mom, Joshua whispered, are you going to make me hide again? Rebecca's face crumpled with guilt. No, sweetheart. Never again. Mommy made very bad choices, but it's all over now. I watched them silently, emotions warring inside me. A part of me almost wanted to believe her remorse, but the evidence, the lies, the refrigerator, those things could never be erased. I need to run an errand, I told her. I'll be back in 2 hours. Her face tightened. Where are you going? To meet with the lawyer about custody arrangements. Her lips went pale, but she nodded. We'll be here. I kissed Joshua on the head, whispered that I loved him, then walked out the door. But I didn't drive far. 1 block away, I slipped into Frank's surveillance van. From there, through tinted windows and hidden cameras, I watched the house that had once been mine. At 4:23, Adrian Cole's sleek BMW pulled into the driveway. Game time, Frank muttered, adjusting his camera lenses. My phone buzzed. It was Marianne. Is he inside? She asked. Yes, I said. Top floor, master bedroom. Use the key. She hung up, her silence sharp as a blade. Minutes later, chaos erupted. Sarah tried frantically to hide Joshua in the basement again, her desperation recorded from every angle by the cameras I had installed. Adrian rushed upstairs, searching for an exit he would never find. Then came the knock on the door, 2 patrol cars responding to an anonymous call I had placed minutes earlier. Suspicious activity. Possible endangerment of a child. Rebecca answered, her voice trembling as she insisted everything was fine. But the officers weren't convinced. Upstairs, Marianne entered the master bedroom with the spare key her husband had given her months ago. She found him crouched in my closet. Her scream tore through the walls like a thunderclap, bringing everyone running. The scene that followed unfolded in perfect, devastating precision, Rebecca babbling excuses, Adrian trying to climb out the window, Marianne brandishing photos and records, the police forcing their way through every room. And Joshua, thank God, safely guarded in the basement until I retrieved him myself. By evening, both Rebecca and Adrian were in custody. She for child endangerment. He for fraud, blackmail, and whatever new charges Marianne's evidence had unleashed. As I carried Joshua out of the police station later that night, his voice was small, tentative, but stronger than I had expected. "Dad, are the bad people going to jail?" I knelt in front of him, looking into his wide, fearful eyes. "Yes, buddy. The bad people are going to jail. All of them." And as I said those words, for the first time in months, I believed them. The nightmare wasn't over, not yet. There would be trials, custody battles, long nights filled with questions and therapy sessions. But the tide had turned. The trap had closed. And for once, justice was on our side. The courthouse loomed above me like a fortress, its stone columns casting long shadows across the steps as I walked in with my attorney. 3 weeks had passed since Rebecca and Adrian were arrested, 3 weeks of gathering evidence, endless paperwork, and sleepless nights with Joshua clinging to me whenever the dark became too heavy. Today was the custody hearing. Today was the day I would either secure my son's future or risk losing him to the very woman who had locked him in a refrigerator. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected, its wood-paneled walls trapping every word like a confession. Rebecca sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her once polished beauty withered, her hair hanging limp. When our eyes met, she mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." I turned away. Some apologies come too late. The judge entered, a sharp-eyed woman whose presence commanded silence. For hours, my attorney presented evidence, photographs, medical records, psychological evaluations. Then came the most damning piece, Joshua's crumpled note, written in his shaky 8-year-old handwriting. The courtroom held its breath as the words were read aloud. "Mom makes me go in the cold box when Uncle Adrian comes. I love you, Dad. Help me." I watched Rebecca's face as the words of our son were spoken, but she couldn't meet my eyes. Testimonies followed. Frank Dwyer described the surveillance footage showing Rebecca pushing Joshua into hiding whenever Adrian appeared. A child psychologist explained the scars of trauma Joshua now carried, the nightmares, the fear of closed spaces, the way he believed his safety depended on silence. Rebecca's attorney tried to argue she had been manipulated, coerced by Adrian's threats. But then came the texts, her own words betraying her. "Kids asking too many questions. Need a better way to keep him quiet." Another, written just days before I discovered the truth, "Adrian says we need a permanent solution." The judge's eyes burned with anger as she asked Rebecca directly what that meant. Rebecca stammered, claiming she thought it meant boarding school or more visits to her mother. But when pressed, she admitted Adrian had spoken about people who could make problems disappear. My blood went cold as the truth became undeniable. Joshua hadn't just been an inconvenience. He had been marked as expendable. When the judge asked if I had anything to say before her ruling, I stood slowly, my knees weak but my voice steady. I told her about my son. About how an 8-year-old boy should be worried about math homework, not wondering if his mother would lock him away in the dark. I told her about his nightmares, his fear of the very person meant to protect him, and the promise I made that he would never be hurt again. "Some choices," I said, my voice breaking but firm, "are unforgivable. My son deserves to grow up without fear. And that can only happen if the woman who betrayed him has no power over his life." The ruling was swift and merciless. Rebecca's parental rights were terminated immediately. No visitation. No contact until Joshua turned 18, and only if he chose it. Sole custody was granted to me. The gavel struck like thunder, and just like that, the chains that had bound my son to a nightmare were broken. 3 days later, I faced Adrian Cole one last time in the visitor's room of the county jail. His arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow stare of a man whose empire had collapsed. I leaned across the table, my voice low and certain. If you ever come within 1,000 miles of my son again, I will dedicate my life to making yours hell. I have nothing left to lose when it comes to protecting him. Remember that. His bitter laugh rang false. You think you've won? Your wife is ruined. Your boy will grow up knowing she chose someone else. That doesn't go away. I rose to leave, pausing only to say, he'll grow up knowing that when it mattered most, someone chose him first. Months later, Joshua and I moved north to Flagstaff. I sold the old house, bought a small auto shop, and hung a new sign, Mercer and Son Auto Repair. My boy was years away from working there, but the name mattered. Slowly, Joshua began to heal. There were still nightmares, but fewer of them. There were good days, filled with school and friends and laughter, the kind of normal moments that had once felt impossible. One evening, as I tucked him into bed, he asked, "Dad, are you happy?" I thought about it for a long time. My marriage was ashes, my old life gone. But as I looked at his face, trusting, safe, alive, I realized the answer. I'm content, buddy. We're safe, we're together, and we're building something good. That's better than happy. He smiled sleepily, and for the first time in a long while, I believed it. A year later, I stood on the sideline of a soccer field, cheering as Joshua scored his first goal. His grin could have lit the entire world. Frank found me after the game, handing me a newspaper, financial fraud ring broken up, Adrian Cole sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Rebecca's name was buried in the article too, convicted, branded for life, barred from ever working with children again. I folded the paper and let it fall from my hands. That chapter was over. Joshua came running toward me, holding his small trophy, his laughter filling the air. "Dad," he said, breathless with joy, "next season, do you think you could coach my team?" I smiled, pulling him into a hug. "I don't know much about soccer, buddy." He looked up at me, eyes shining. "That's okay. You know about being a good dad. That's more important." And in that moment, I understood. We hadn't just survived betrayal. We hadn't just escaped danger. We had built something stronger than fear, stronger than loss. We had built a life worth living.
Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, shocked you, or simply made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment, your thoughts, your story, your truth. Subscribe for more raw, real, and unforgettable confessions. And if this story made you feel seen, share it. Someone else might need to hear it too. You're not alone here. This channel is a safe space for those who've been betrayed, broken, and rebuilt.